FY21 calendar and the Fronteras Charter School FY21 calendar.
I move the consent agenda.
Second.
Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda passes. Moving on to item 7, action items. Item A, K-8 Math, Algebra 1 and 2, and Geometry Curriculum. Is there a motion and a second to bring that forward?
I move action item A, K-8 Math, Algebra 1 and 2, and Geometry Curriculum.
Second.
Right. Is there an administrative report?
I do have some follow-up information in regards to last meeting's administrative report. A board member had requested more information regarding 8th grade students enrolled in Algebra 1. Currently, 17% of this year's 8th graders, 257, are enrolled in Algebra 1. 25% of them are economically disadvantaged, compared to, as a district, we're closer to 38-40%. So you would want those cohorts to match. And then we have also disaggregated that. 70% of our students in Algebra 1 are Caucasian, 11 are 2 or more races, 8% are Alaska Native, 7% are Hispanic, 2% American Indian, 1% Asian, and 1% Pacific Islander. A board member also requested information regarding remedial math placement. We can only look at that for the University of Alaska system. We don't have a mechanism in place to be able to look at that nationwide, other than we could do surveys of, I guess, our recent graduates, and we should do that. But in fall of 17, we had 18% of that freshman class that required remedial math. In 18, it was 16%, and last year it was 8%. We do attribute part of that drop to efforts that we have made within schools to make sure that students are ready for that math with APEX support and other materials I talked about. But I also think that the middle college and ANSEP has something to do with that, because we're getting students through that with scaffolded support. That's all the information I have.
At this time, is there any public comment concerning this issue? Seeing none, do we have any board discussion? Yes, Member Ponder.
I got a handful of things. I know there was a report on some of, and responses provided regarding some of the questions that were asked last board meeting. I know that there was a request for other types of curriculum that were out there that aren't stamped with a Common Core stamp within them. I looked for that. I didn't see that. There was also a deed letter that was referenced that stated something in regards to Common Core that was also requested, and that was a letter addressing Alaska Statute 1407.020. I looked for that and didn't see that. Do we have any information on either of those two things? Thank you.
So we talked about this last time. The Common Core, our Alaska state standards are aligned with the Common Core, and we are required to follow the Alaska state standards. There is a statute that talks about no money being spent on Common Core. But when I discussed this with the commissioner in detail, his understanding is that that is deed money. I know that that created some concern within the board, but the reality is what does that mean? You can't spend any money on Common Core. There's multiplication in the Common Core. Does that mean we can't buy any materials that teach multiplication or phonics? And the reality is if the board doesn't approve these materials and this curriculum, we'll use the existing one. That's aligned to the Common Core because that's aligned to the Alaska state standards. And so the challenge is not whether or not we can bring you different curriculum. There is a program out there that we used to have, Saxon Math. It is not aligned to the Common Core. They did not change it. But if we were to recommend that to you, we would be going against the law in teaching Alaska state standards.
So was there not a letter from deed dictating those things, or was that just a conversation that you had with the commissioner?
I have an email that is a one sentence response that says it's his understanding that that isn't related to school district money, it's related to deed, and I had a conversation with him on the phone. There's not clarity around it, so there's some conflicting things. I'm bringing forward to you materials that are aligned to the Alaska state standards.
Okay, and I mean, as far as the other types of curriculum, on the Department of Education, under mathematical content standards, it states that the standards, which I'm assuming are all of the standards that are written out that you had indicated, align themselves closely with Common Core, but it states that the standards themselves do not dictate curriculum or delivery of content. So if you had a Saxon math program that was put out and implemented while you still had software licenses for Common Core, creating a hybrid between the two with a focus on Saxon math, what would be the problem with that? I mean, that would be right along the lines with Common Core, Alaska standards and what DEED has stated. We'll go with that one.
So curriculum is really our scope and sequence and our pacing guides. We identify materials that align with those. So when we look at Alaska state standards and we create our curriculum maps, we look for materials that are aligned with teaching those. Saxon is not aligned with teaching that. Some of the robust changes that occurred was a lot of Algebra 1 got pushed down and was complete by 8th grade. Algebra 2, a good portion of what we used to teach in Algebra 2 is now down in Algebra 1. Those programs have not been aligned. So we only vetted those programs that were aligned to the Alaska state standards, which are aligned to the Common Core. And this is a board decision. If you want to vote against this, we'll use the current curriculum that we're using. If you want to vote that we go back through the entire curriculum process, we will do that. That's board discretion.
Was as a follow-up, was the district aware of SB 236 and the introduction of that bill short title, Crime of Teaching Common Core? Is currently in the Education Committee.
Would you please tell me a little bit more about that?
Basically, it just rolls out the fact that there's a fine associated with teaching anything using Common Core standards. It updates the current statutes to make it so that there can't be one-off conversations that might go against what is both on DEED and what the statute states. I mean, if DEED states on their website that the standards themselves do not dictate curriculum or delivery of content, I think there's a lot of latitude given to the districts, as you've indicated just now, on what the board can do. I think one of the biggest things that we talk about is reading and math, and how we may not be where we could be with those two areas. And one of the biggest things I hear as well is that there's a lack of parental involvement. But I think it makes it really difficult when there's a curriculum out there that when a third grader brings home their math and the parent tries to help and they can't help because 5 plus 5 isn't really 5 plus 5. That's not the answer they're looking for. They want 5 minutes worth of explaining how you got to an answer, whether it's correct or wrong. So I think having a curriculum established that is parental friendly and allows the district to dictate what that curriculum is and the delivery of the content, we can still hit the standards, but just in a different way.
So I believe the bill that you're referencing is Representative Reinhold's bill. I'm aware of that being introduced. And it's something that from the beginning, from when the new Alaska state standards, that has been really a mission of hers to change that. We are not making recommendations or doing work based on bills that people have introduced. We're doing work based on the current statutes. When you reference our achievement, it's really Peaks achievement, and Peaks assesses the Alaska state standards. So while I am concerned, as you are, about our results on the Alaska state standards on Peaks assessment, if we chose curriculum that was not aligned with the Alaska state standards, it's probable that our assessment results would go down. So again, I really do not have further information. I think this is a philosophical, political issue more than a curriculum issue, and I defer to the board to vote.
Dr. Welton.
I know that we have spent a lot of time on looking at our math over the years. We have looked at a lot of different math programs, and we had parent academies so that parents could learn how we had changed the way and look at a different way of teaching it. And, if you've got 10 people who showed up, we were lucky. And we did try often to do this. So, parent involvement is extremely important. The academies were at different times, and so we've tried very hard to bring this about. I think that, if you have a different way of teaching this at home, you can do that. You may be confusing your child from the school. If you want to go into the classroom, I am sure a teacher would be very welcome to have you come in and observe how it's taught. I had difficulty working with my grandchildren, and I realized that I was still working of something that was 50, almost 60 years ago. So there are different ways of looking at it. I believe that the philosophical issues here is not something that we can solve today. We need the scope and sequence to be aligned so that we are not putting our kids at risk of missing out more than they have. We realized the studies we've done said that our 6th grade math is not meeting the standards that we need. So we've looked at that, and we've done some reassessing of how to teach it and what order to teach things. I think that we are on the right track. I'd like for us to vote to approve this so that we can move on. It doesn't mean that we stop looking at different curriculum, but I think that this is something that needs to be taken care of today. Thank you.
Member Larson.
This is a very interesting discussion we're having here. I don't remember anything in my literature anywhere saying that this is a political issue or some sort of politics going on here. What I see this as, if our children and parents are having a tough time teaching 3rd grade math at home, it takes a village to teach a child. You're limiting that child to the classroom only with no assistance in the home. If it's that tough to teach a 3rd grader, then there should be some sort of criteria or some sort of curriculum sent to the parents to help them assist in teaching that course. And I assume there is, but I don't know. But a 3rd grade math course shouldn't be that difficult to teach. And there's nothing wrong with looking at the curriculum. There's nothing wrong with reviewing curriculum, and nothing wrong with questioning curriculum. And I think this is a very good discussion to do so. I think that the whole ball of wax got mixed up in politics years ago, but I don't see it getting mixed up in politics now. What I see is we want to educate our children. We want to educate them in the best way of teaching them mathematics or anything else in a simple way of doing so, and have our parents assist. But if we got curriculum that won't allow our parents to assist, then they're only stuck with that classroom setting. In elementary school, teaching math is in segments or blocks, and that would be the only time that you could teach it. It's like teaching reading. We used to do it with my kids. We used to do it with our grandkids. When they had a reader, you would read that same reader at home and be able to help the school teacher and help their test scores and help them have the ability to learn how to read. And I think that's what we're looking at in math also. Thank you.
So parent involvement, parent-friendly materials was one of the criteria that we looked at when we were vetting, because that's a common concern that we hear. And so I'm going to ask Executive Director of Instruction, Tracy Peterson, to talk about what materials are available for parents.
Yeah, through the chair, Member Larson, every chapter, okay, first I just want to clarify that the materials that we're looking at are just for middle school. We're going to do a materials review for elementary next year. But this conversation is great, and it still will apply. We'll probably have the same things that we're looking at. We always want parents to be able to use our materials and understand them. So every chapter starts with a letter to parents. Examples were sent to all of our middle school parents for these Curriculum Associates Ready Math materials. And parents reviewed, the top 2 programs were sent to all of our parents 4th through 7th grade. And parents, so after looking at the 2 programs that were presented to them, 70% of parents liked what Ready Math had better. And there were videos included. I'm not sure if you all had a chance to look at those things that were shared with you as well, but videos were included, letters to parents were included, information about the math is included for parents. They've designed their materials so that teachers have better talking points to talk with parents about as well. So we know that's a concern, and I think Curriculum Associates as well as our math teachers are doing their very best to communicate clearly with parents what it is that students are expected to know and be able to do at each of those math levels.
Well, I have a couple questions for you, if you may. I can see that an outstanding job is made to make sure that the curriculum aligns with the state standards. But now let's look at academic performance, that aspect. When we look at Ready Math and going out and look at the peak performance for the middle schools within the district, scores are not so great, and some are better than others. But how does Ready Math, that curriculum that you have chosen, set aside how it fits with state standards? How does Ready Math address the curriculum or address the issue of the middle school test scores? What performance objective are you looking to see by implementing this curriculum to that situation?
I want to answer this in a maybe might be a long roundabout way, but I want to start with, I will tell you, nobody thinks that a program is going to be the end-all be-all answer to our problems with math. I know you don't, none of us do. So we've really invested time and energy and money into professional development with our teachers. We've hired a national math consultant. Last year we worked with the a blended fellowship with all math teachers, all middle school math teachers. We know that we did not do a good enough job when the standards changed back in 2012 of doing some deep professional development with teachers. Standards changed. A big focus that changed is that the second, fourth, and sixth grade years are more conceptual. The standards are more around concepts than just procedures. And to be honest, our math consultant went into every classroom, every middle school classroom, and said, we're really teaching sixth grade math like seventh grade math. We're not teaching what the actual standards are. So we knew we had to go back and do that work with our teachers. It's been well received. Teachers have, I can't speak for every teacher, but the responses we've got from teachers is they really appreciated this professional development, and they're learning things that they didn't know before. So I think that's really our first start, is we want teachers to understand those standards better, and then select materials that support them. So how these materials do it is that they are aligned with the Alaska State standards. So at sixth grade, students are learning conceptual math. A lot more is around discourse than was done in the past. So I think it's a combination of more professional development for our teachers, a deeper understanding of the standards, and selecting materials that are then tools that help them achieve those standards.
Okay, thank you. And now the next question here. I see we're using Go Math in the elementary, and now we're moving from Go Math in the middle school to Ready Math.
Correct.
Is that correct? So when we move from Go Math to Ready Math, Is there going to be anything lost in the transition? Are they similar and compliant in scope and sequence, or are we having two different products here that we're going to try to align?
I can't tell you that there won't be some gaps. There probably will be, and we're doing our best to identify those so we can point those out to teachers before they start using these materials. And we're working closely with the Curriculum Associates professional. One of the probably most attractive pieces to this publisher is the professional development that is required with it. And our teachers are hungry for that. They want it. So we'll be finding those areas and pointing them out to teachers, coming up with strategies like we have to go back and do a little remediation. But the truth is, Go Math that we're currently using for middle school, it is different than our elementary program. It was, the elementary Go Math program was actually written around the new standards. It's a new program. It was started in 2012. The middle school Go Math materials say Go Math on them, but they were really brought together from 3 different publishers that HMH absorbed. And our middle school teachers always complained, actually, that it wasn't as coherent as what we did see in our elementary, which was more coherent, because the actual program, it was pieced together. I mean, I don't know if the company would say that, but that's what we've discovered, and it just wasn't as fluid and coherent. So, it required teachers to really understand the standards so they knew what to do with those materials. So we think it's an improvement, and the middle school teachers who voted on these programs, again, it was actually I believe it was 80% who selected this as their top choice. So they're the experts, and we really rely on them to dig in deep to that.
Okay, another question here for you, if you don't mind. Have we trialed Ready Math in any of our buildings in the districts, or have we pulled any data out of other states or other school districts that might be using this program and seeing how well it functioned within their districts?
On the first question, I can't say we've really piloted it, although we did send the materials back to schools with the teachers who were on the writing team, about 10 or 12 middle school teachers, and they did try out they had full access to all the online materials, and they had just one set of print materials, and what they were asked to do is find whatever lesson they're on, find the similar lesson in Ready Math. It was that week before Christmas break, and take that week and teach with these materials. So again, that was part of they did that and then gave us their feedback on the program and what they liked about it. We also did quite a bit of outreach to outside districts. I don't have that information with me right now, but specifically with the district in Oregon, we've spoken with superintendent, with curriculum principals in those districts, and people are very happy with the product.
Thank you. Is there any further questions from the board at this time? Yes, Mr. Ponder.
Maybe the only one here that feels this way, but I'm just trying to find out if there's not a fundamental issue with program where you're ready to teach kids, but you also have to set up academies to teach the parents. Is that, I mean, how, I guess I just don't understand that one. How does that work? I mean, that's not really philosophical, I'm just asking.
No, when we implemented Go Math, it was really rough. And I think for 2 reasons. One, the standards did change a lot from the previous standards. They were much more robust. There was gaps then when, what was a second grader moving into 3rd grade, what now is expected in 3rd grade, they weren't introduced to some things. And Go Math was a more progressive math product, and parents didn't know how to help teach it. So we did try to do a series of workshops to be able to help them. Math is quickly, though, it should not be in elementary. It's our hope that, all parents can help kids with math at home. And a fundamental thing is we should never be sending home work. The premise of homework is preparation or practice. We should never be sending home work the kids don't know how to do independently. It's not fair. So that's a problem in the way that we're organizing our instruction. And really the impetus for why some math teachers move to a flip model where kids watch a video at home and then they do the practice of the homework during school day. That's kind of the philosophy behind it. But at any point in math, parents will drop off and not be able to help their kids as they get older in progression. Like I said, one of the things that we vetted for this math curriculum was the parent-friendly userness. It's a common concern that we've gotten from parents and a really valid concern.
With the discussion that's gone on, I go back to the fact that if we're lacking parental involvement, but we're not putting forth something that parents can easily do and help, then how are we ever going to be able to? We continue to fall back on the lacking parental involvement. You got to get out of that and break that. And in order to break that, I think, as I stated at the beginning, other types of curriculum, not stamped with the Common Core, was requested. Obviously, that didn't come forth, but we're operating under the precepts that there's a standard in the misunderstanding, fundamental misunderstanding. If it states on deed that the standards themselves did not dictate the curriculum or delivery of content, I think we can look outside of the box and be able to put something forth that meets all things. And so I would put forth are you entertaining motions at this time?
If you have a motion that you wish to put on the table.
I would put forth a motion to table this and be able to have a better look at the curriculum that's out there that is more based on the Saxon, that would be able to utilize some of the online resources to have a hybrid approach to this. So right now I would put forth a motion to table it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there has been a motion presented and seconded to table this item. Is there any discussion? Yes, Dr. Welton.
I believe that we have spent a lot of time on this, and the people have been involved in this for a long time to prepare for this. I believe that you are it's disrespectful to the process and everything to come up with this at this time. I know that you asked previously, that it was asked for previously for other information, and that information may not have come in the form that was wanted, but the information's there. I think that you are that this to table this disrespects the whole process, disrespects the work that has been done, and I believe that there is a definite need to move forward with this so that the gaps that we do know are there can be addressed, because it was the 6th grade math that needed the help, and this is that curriculum that we hope will cover it. It may not, but we hope that it will, and I think that to delay it is not an appropriate or positive thing for our students. I believe that we need to move on. We've discussed this a couple of times now, and I think we need to move on. Thank you.
Member Larson. Member Trimmer.
So speaking as a father of a 5th grade math student and a 7th grade homeschooled math student that I do the math with, I feel that this is more than adequate material that meets the state standard, and I feel that the argument that we have is a state level argument at this time. We can't solve the state's issue on what standards they tell us we have to do until the state is ready to give us more local control. I think it's a moot point.
I need to ask a clarification, because we're asking the board to do several things at the same time. So I would ask that you consider maybe dividing the question. K-5 math curriculum has our curriculum, our scope and sequence. We went back through it. We're not asking to change the materials. Our writing teams have gone through and identified areas that there may have been gaps. Maybe things were taught late where they, after the testing season, it's very common for probability and statistics to be the last chapter in a book. That ends up being the weakest area that we have in testing often. So some of those things were changed. And the same thing for high school. We are not changing the materials for high school or elementary school. So if you do not approve those, then we will continue to use the old pacing guides that our teachers did not improve based on teaching this for the last 5 years, but we will be using the same materials.
Member Larson.
There's a lot of criteria on our testing issues, but what we got to look at as a school board is the fact that our tests are some of the lowest in the nation. So how do you bring a child up to test well or have adequate knowledge of the material? Yeah, there was gaps on the last one, and I was there to vote on it, and it seemed like a great math curriculum, and it was sold to us, and then boom, there was gaps. And that curriculum hasn't proven to be adequate as far as testing. And I know standardized testing, there's a lot of questions about standardized testing, this and that. And I agree with it, especially since we test a month before school lets out. And we lose, and that's another argument I don't want to get into, but when we have computerized testing, it seems like we could get the test scores back sooner, but we lose all that 3 to 4 weeks of classroom education that could be utilized when a kid comes up to test. So I think this is a very healthy conversation. In order to go forward, a little bit more information wouldn't hurt to assure us, or at least give us a little bit more confidence in this material or a hybrid material. Because once we vote on this, then we can't switch it in the middle of the river, and we want at least some knowledge and some effort that this will bring up test scores. Right now, I don't know how many times I've been told, why should we give you more money on the BSA when you don't give us results? Now, I don't know how to get those results. I think it's the curriculum. It's not obviously the teachers. The teachers are there, supervised by principals, and they're supervised their classroom abilities. And the ones that don't have the abilities are oftentimes worked with. So, is it the curriculum that's causing these low test scores? We've been given the challenge of bringing these test scores up. Is it the curriculum? I wouldn't mind tabling this, but not tabling it indefinitely. We've got to be able to table it for, even a month or so, just a month, to take a look and give us some more confidence in this material that it's going to actually give us the results we want. And right now, maybe it's because of my own fault, I don't have the confidence in it, and I don't have the confidence in much of anything of these test scores going up. We're all here for one reason, and that's what it says on my desk. Is it good for children? We've got to educate children so when they get out into the workforce, they have the education necessary to do well in school. And with media, and I'm talking about everything from your cell phone to games to YouTube and everything else is now, and here's a philosophical, I apologize, is really interfering with home life education. But I would like to make sure that material we're sending home, the parents can utilize and help with those kids. I know we don't send homework home, but there's a bunch of parents out there that want to assure that their kids have that advantage, and they need the material to be able to do it. So it's a good discussion, and we have a really sound, hard position to bring these test scores up and educate our children. That's what we've been cited with. That's why we're sitting here, and we have to do that. So I don't mind tabling. I don't want to table indefinitely. If we're going to table this, we're going to come up with a solution one way or another to the curriculum and to what we're looking for, and to have some confidence in it. Thank you.
Mr. Hart.
Yeah, I just want to address a couple concerns that were brought up by.
Is this about the motion that's on
It is.
for table?
It is
Okay.
regarding. As far as the discussion that we're disrespecting the process, I think spending $1 million and voting for something that we're not positive is going to work, that's kind of disrespectful to the taxpayers. And we were elected for a particular purpose to do our due diligence, and this is electronic. I don't think there's a delay in printing, a time delay that we need to worry about. I think they'll be able to, send it to us digitally just fine. I think tabling it is a prudent action. And if you've got a board that's split on this and they're not convinced, or they're looking at it in a particular way or with suspicion that this is just yet another wolf in sheep's clothing that's going to come in here and keep our kids from performing. And so we need to be convinced. The marketing stuff that they send parents, that's wonderful. I'm glad they send videos to the parents to keep them sold on this. But frankly, we bear that responsibility. In discussions with DEED, we found out that the board, the district, we have the responsibility to select the curriculum and to set our goals. So we have that duty, we have that responsibility. Please, let's make this happen. Table it for now, and then in the meantime, hopefully we can get some presentations on this, perhaps, to tell us what the difference is between this Common Core curriculum and the previous Common Core curriculum that didn't do so hot.
Okay, Dr. Goyette.
Yeah, I'd like to make two really clarifications. There is no doubt that we need to do a better job in mathematics. However, for the last 2 years on the state PEAKS assessment, we have been the highest of the Big Five. I am not saying that because that's good enough. I'm saying that because we used to not be the highest of the Big Five. We used to be one of the bottom, year after year after year. So our students are performing better in math 2 years in a row than Anchorage, Kenai, Juneau, and Fairbanks. The other point that I want to make is there is no magic program out there. If we could find it, we would. And I want to give a perfect example for that. One of my charges when I came in, the elementary school had 2 different math curriculums. Half of our elementary schools did Saxon, a very traditional math program. Half of our schools did another progressive program. It was math expressions. When we looked at the data for their schools, there was examples of excellence and examples of really poor performance in both programs. So really, the most critical factor in math performance is the efficacy of our teachers. So we cannot guarantee you that this program is going to radically increase test scores. But we have gone through the vetted process, a process that is outlined in board policy. We're happy to do a work session if you want that. But I would want direction from the board. Do you want to learn more about the materials and the curriculum that we're bringing forward after we've gone through the process that you outlined, including stakeholders? Or do you want us to restart the process? And we're not simply just going to pick materials off the shelf and say, here's a program. We have to go back through that entire process. That's what's outlined in board policy.
Mr. Taylor.
I want to thank Member Ponder for bringing up some of the questions he did. I came into this tonight a little bit nervous about making this vote because of the lack of knowledge that I have on this program lack of knowledge that I have on Common Core. I see a dollar figure here, of $700,000 for the 6 through 8 materials. That strikes a chord in me, and that we need to be responsible with that spending to increase our scores. I really do support the opportunity to table this for a short period for a couple reasons. One, I would like to go out and talk to the people in my district, parents and teachers, and receive their opinions and their views, and have the opportunity to spend the time out there getting the knowledge from them that I could before being asked to make this vote on something so critical. I think that our parents need to be more involved, and somehow being out there asking them to do that and let them give me their opinion. If they won't come here and do it, I would like the opportunity to go out there. So to table this is something I'm in favor of. Thank you.
Member Welton?
First off, there was a survey sent out to parents. I know because I have a student who was in the 4th grade, and it was sent to 4th grade parents, and I know that from my son, and so it was surveyed. The material sat in this room and could be looked at by any one of us, and I spent a good hour going through the different materials so that I had opportunity to look at both of those. As a board, our job is not to be minutely involved in every single aspect of the district. We are to know whether the process was followed. We have been presented and shown that the process was followed. It is not to minutely tell you exactly how to do everything. This is a board process. It is to read and know that the process has been followed and the people who were tasked with the job did the job. Right now, you are saying they did not do the job, and that hurts. I think that hurts all of the district itself. The surveys were done. People were asked. I spent time. If you did not spend the time to go through those books and look at the videos, then that's on you. That's all I have to say.
Member Trimmer?
I'd already raised my hand. That was a lot of what I had to say. Was we've had 2 weeks to look at this. We have Google in these days that we can search things for the last 2 weeks. We've in the past with boards, we've never had this issue because it's part of the board's job to go do their own research. It's not the administration's job to do all the research for the board. And if you came on this board expecting that, you're in the wrong place.
Member Ponder?
I think there's a few things that deserve being addressed. First and foremost, board policy. Board policy dictates that it is the role of the school board to overview and look at the curriculum, right? So we have a huge charge in that. 2 weeks ago, there was a request for other opportunities and other curriculum that might be out there that could be presented, and it never came. 3, Department of Education, their website states, it is a district decision how to design course offerings covering the mathematics standards. So we can go back to all of the different arguments of whether it's a state, whether there was enough time or whether there wasn't enough time. There was requests put in, and those requests never came forth. And so, again, I stand by the motion to table this so that if curriculum was chosen in a means and manner with the understanding that Common Core had to be what was presented to this board, but there's all kinds of things out there that Department of Education puts forth saying it's the district's decision how you design the course, and these standards don't dictate curriculum. Let's look at it from that perspective with our eyes wide open.
Okay, is there any more discussion? Seeing none, it is now time to vote.
Would you clarify what we're voting on, please?
We are voting for the motion to table item A, K-8 math, algebra 1 and algebra 2, and geometry curriculum.
We need a time certain or it is dead.
So is that an amendment to the motion?
The motion has to have the time certain, whatever date it is, or you are asking for it to just die.
Okay.
So that's just a point of clarification, or is that subjective? Is that, are you saying that that's your opinion on it, or is that?
No, that's
Robert's
Robert's rules.
May I put out that we could do a work session on April 1st? I would prefer not to do it the following school board meeting. We will not, because spring break and many people are gone, and I want to make sure that we can do our due diligence. I would request that if you put this off, that you let, that it's really clear what our direction is on what you want presented. And then we could present it on April 1st in a work session, and then that could come up back up for vote on April 15th.
Yes, Ms. Ponder.
Are we not having a school board meeting on the 18th?
We are having a school board meeting, but next week is spring break, so many staff are not going to be working. We can certainly, I'm happy to present it then, but we'll have 4 business days to present it.
No,
Prepare.
I totally understand. Perhaps we can have a work session to discuss, and then something then to be brought forth on the 1st.
So we bring forth, do we need to amend the motion to have the vote?
I would
Move this to
amend
the
the
15th?
motion to extend this time certain to the 15th of April and let the timeline work itself out. So you've got an end date. Let the rest of it, whenever we're going to have a work session and what dates we're going to have a work session, work itself out.
Okay.
And it just extend it to the April 15th, I believe, and let the rest of the stuff work out as we go along.
Second.
Do you want to amend your motion, Mr. Ponder?
I thought he just put forth the motion to amend it to
So
that, and I'm
you're-
seconding.
Amending and then, okay. So is there any discussion on the amendment to the motion? Seeing none, do I need to reread the motion as amended before we vote?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Do you want to put the motion up? Okay. The motion presented is to table item A, K-8 math, algebra 1 and algebra 2, and geometry curriculum until the April 15th general board meeting. Okay, let's vote.